Okay, can everyone hear me? Cadences? Okay, I mean, well, there's specific cadences are basically, as far as I know, ending from like the last chord of the progression, just ending the progression, resolving the progression essentially. And so there's like perfect cadences, imperfect cadences, plagal, a bunch of names. But basically, good thing to remember is can go from a 5 chord at the end of a progression and then resolve with the 1. And you're really always going to want to resolve with the 1. And when I say the 1 chord and the 5 chord, I mean based on the scale. So if you're working in a scale, let's say C major. Oh, let's get rid of that. C major, it's just all the white keys. I'm going to change my keyboard so it's easier to see. And you'll have whatever progression. The thing with cadences, though, I feel... So that is a kind of... how do I say this? It's like a classical music theory concept. And so a lot of the times it deals with things you won't hear in dance music as much, because a lot of the times in dance music you'll just have a 4 chord or 6 chord or whatever progression, and it will just repeat basically a bunch of times. But with classical music there will be more resolve, at least I find. But you can still have the concept of resolving somewhere. It doesn't have to resolve the entire piece. But so 1 chord is the first chord in the scale. So we're in C major, C is the first note. The first chord would be C major. And does anyone, I saw some people in chat not sure what chords were or how to form them. So anyone have, I'll go on about cadences for a while, but just if anyone wants to know more about chords, about scales, whatever, that's basic concepts. Those would be easy to go over, and I could explain those pretty well, I think. See, that's okay. Let's not use inverted chords. Okay, so G chord is the 5 chord in the C major scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So a common cadence, I think it's called an authentic cadence, is when you go from a 5 to a 1. And that has a very significant sense of resolve. And resolve basically just means, the chord progression takes you on whatever journey it takes you on, and then goes back to the beginning, and you feel like it's ended. If I were to go maybe from this chord to I don't know, F. You don't have the sense of resolve yet. It needs to go back to the first chord of the progression and going from fifth chord to the first chord is a very good way to do that. So you don't necessarily need to end all your progressions with a 5 chord to go back to the 1, but if you want that sense of finality, then it's definitely a good tool to use. But like with all of music theory, they're more of tools than stricter rules to go by. I mean, advanced music theory probably accounts for almost everything that happens in modern music, but at least I think. But just and that's a pretty important thing to remember, is that if you don't know everything about music theory, which very few people probably do, then you might not actually be breaking the rules when you're breaking them. So don't be afraid to break the rules as you know them. But yeah, I mean, if anyone isn't sure about chords, about scales, about melody writing, so Turtle Slave Music asked about melodies. I don't really know melodies specific to what you're asking, but I guess I can go over melody writing. I know a lot of people always want to know about that, so a good thing is to start with not necessarily a chord progression, but maybe a bass line. So I'm just going to be working in A minor here. I'll pump up the BPM a little bit, and then so the intervals are part of chords. We're not necessarily working in chords yet, but if you know what intervals sound good together, then I said intervals are parts of chords, but melodies are in a way part of the chord, actually, when you think about it. So this is a minor third, basically up 1, 2, 3 steps, and major would be up 4 steps. This is major, this is minor. But no one's asked about that yet, so I'm guessing you all know that. So yeah, a really basic way to get pretty basic melodies would be to have the same interval over the bass line play each time. So this is the third, and it doesn't minor, major, third, whatever. When you're talking about consistency over the interval from a bass line, that's just whichever, if it's a major or minor chord, whatever. So if you want to go for a more basic melody, same interval from the bass line. So A up to C is a third, F to A is a third, a major third this time, but like I said, doesn't matter too much. So I'm going to keep that consistent and just go with the third every time. Okay, but the fifth is going to sound good at the end. But notice these are all very common intervals from the bass line. So I said I was keeping consistent with the third. I kind of broke that at the end, but so third. Yeah, I think no one's asked about it yet. So yes, I'm assuming y'all know chords are a basic triad is the root of the chord, then the third, whether it be major or minor, depending on the scale, and then the fifth. And so, like I said, the third is either 3 steps up or 4 steps up, depending on major or minor. The fifth is always going to be, I think it's 7. Yeah, 7 steps up. And a good thing, if you want to get good at melody writing, is just to memorize all the fifths, every single one. So A to E, B to F sharp, C to G, every single one. And then you'll find that you can write melodies way faster. And yeah, so I'm working off those basic 2 intervals, thirds and fifths. I'm not there's sevenths, there's ninths. I'm not worrying about those yet. Okay, so if you were to look at the actual scale, A minor, a natural minor, that will be all the white keys, just like C major. But I have this G sharp in here, which it seems to be breaking the rule, but there's another kind of minor chord. There's or scale. There's actually 2 others that I know of. Let's see if I can. Scales, minor harmonic. Okay. So harmonic minor is going to be the same exact thing as the normal minor. So like with A, it's just all the white keys. Except the seventh note of the scale you're going to raise just up 1 note. So normally it would be G. But you're just going to raise that up. And that's a good tool to use for what I find to be more interesting melodies and progressions compared to just a natural minor. Okay, so what else do I have going on in this melody? So I have see this note E is just in common. So I don't know the exact significance of that in this context, but it definitely makes it more familiar than if you were to do something like this. That's a good switch up, but it isn't as familiar. And this is a really basic melody right now, so let's construct something a little more complex.
Follow.
Still pretty basic, but at least we have this line in here. It's just ascending along the scale. Skips a note, but you'll find the F with A, so I believe that's a 6th. And unless you're actually using the 6th chord, or a chord of this interval of 6, the F isn't really going to sound good. It's going to sound slightly dissonant. Since this chord is basically just a minor. The F wouldn't quite sound that great. Sounds okay, but thank you for the follows, by the way. I saw Lumen, someone, who was it? Golem Sarwar. Okay, can't really say that. Thank you both for the follows. Okay, so where was I? Yeah, so you just have this ascending, and so you don't need to think of every note of the melody as some interval from the bass line, but it's helpful to do that sometimes. Like if I was looking at the D from the A, that would be a 4. This isn't really a 4 chord, but the melody doesn't work exactly like intervals of a chord. Say, Is my voice lower? Let me check. Yeah, it might be a bit too low, actually. I think that should be better. Now that should be about even. Okay, so I'm kind of ranting on about melodies and harmonic minors. Does anyone have any questions regarding anything I've talked about, or really anything at all? Because I just want to make sure I'm going over things that are relevant to everyone. Where'd it go? Okay, so I have my melody now. It's not amazing, but it works. So now to start with my chords, I'll just add the fifth away from the bass. And so it's kind of still boring chords. Do I always start with the chords? No. Sometimes I'll think of a melody, but a melody, unless it's a really, well, I shouldn't say simplistic, but I will anyway. Unless it's a really simplistic melody, it's kind of specific to a chord progression in a way, and how it interacts with the chord progression. So sometimes I'll think of a melody in my head, but it will only have like one correct chord progression to go with it. And I can't hum out the chord progression with the melody, but I just kind of have to figure it out. But if I'm just going about it the way I just want a melody from scratch, I didn't think of one ahead of time, I'll usually just take out the piano and, like kind of what I was doing at the beginning, I'll just have two notes going, so I'll have the bass line at the top of the melody, so. Do I make stuff? Well, I kind of have the scale in mind when I'm making stuff, but once you practice with the scales a lot, they'll just be in your head. So, yeah, the scale is almost always in mind, but keep in mind you can switch scales as you're going along a chord progression or melody. You can go to a different scale, so you might, or you can just go off of the scale. So I don't think of the scale as like a rule, but you just have to know when to stick to it and when to go away from it. Okay, so what am I going to do with these chords? I'll probably get the third in there. So, like I said, I'm working in the harmonic minor, so it's all the white keys except this G, which is the seventh of the chord, is raised since it's the harmonic. So I'll just add the third in according to what fits the scale. So C, it's either going to be C or C sharp here. Let's do C. But notice how these chords are jumping around a lot. The bass of this chord is going from A to F and then to D. It just seems like almost nearly the same chords jumping around. It's not too exciting, so I'm going to invert the chords, and that's basically when you take the same notes of the chord. So I'll keep the A minor chord the same, but let's take this one and let's make it conform to the first one a little more. So I'm going to raise this F up to here. So from F4 to F5, and I'm going to get rid of that one. And then you have the same chord. It sounds different, but it has the same intervals, at least based off the bass note. Sorry about that. Okay, so I'm going to kind of keep doing that for now. And oftentimes you'll end up with a equally as boring chord progression. I don't know. I think sounds a little better. Sounds a little better with the notes switched around or inverted. So here is the big question with electronic music. Since, you're not just going to have some bells playing, probably eventually you'll have some sort of bass line. So with heavier styles of music in particular, just going to make a bass line type thing real quick, just so I can have something. That's fine. So let's say you're making, I don't know, dubstep, house, whatever. You're gonna have, or heavier styles of house. You're gonna have some bass line, and do you want this bass line to just play A the whole time? Probably not. Oh, let's drop that a few octaves. Sounds okay, but if this were, say, the drop of this song, I don't think it would sound that great. So here you can have these chords that are kind of have less of a presence because they're higher up. You can have these with the inversions, but now you're just going to have the actual lowest note of the chord play on the bass line. So I know this one was an F. I know this one was D, and this one was E. But you can still have the inversion somewhere. But you're definitely going to use them more sparingly than you would in just like some light bells. Yeah, so that's basically, I think I went over quite a few things there. Does anyone have any questions? If not, I can probably do some things with seventh chords. I'll just start messing with those. Okay. What about making a rhythm to the melody? Do you mean the drums? And do you mean to any melody or that one that I just deleted? Because I guess I'll just talk about it, unless if you say anything, I can know what you're talking about a little more, but I'll just go on about it for now. Basically, the notes of a melody or chord progression or whatever are going to have some rhythmic presence. So the rhythm or the drums or whatever are going to have to follow. They can't be totally disconnected from the whole idea, the rhythmic idea communicated with the chords or the melody or whatever. Oh, let's bring that up. So I guess the process of creating good rhythm. Oh, for the chords? to the chords. Yeah, so yeah, that's kind of stuff you just learn over time. It's a good thing to do is just to hear a song or whatever genre you're making. Like maybe you're making progressive house. So listen to like a progressive house song and they have bouncier chords, whereas a something more pad based won't have chords that stab like that. But basically, yeah, it's boring to just have 4-bar chords or 1-bar chords or whatever every single time. So there's different tricks to make them more interesting and still have a fairly simple progression that you can just work with easily. Here, let me put this in 128 so it can be house. Okay, and I'm gonna look for a sample. Here, I'll use Splice. Whatever sample. Oh, that's on. So yeah, I basically shifted. I did it consistently. So this one is a little short of the entire bar. This first chord, C major, and then this kind of fills in the gap. And then it takes the entire until the end of the second bar. And if I were to have every chord be the length of this first one, they wouldn't fit. And you can still do that, but it's gonna be more difficult to like write a melody for and rhythm and everything. But definitely not wrong. Omega. How do you make the bass line not sound like the melody? Okay, I'm gonna address that in 1 second. I'm just gonna look at these chords for like a minute and then go to that. So whatever genre you're making, it's good to stay away from just the 1-bar chords that are boring. But if you still want the simple kind of feel to them, then you can just, like I said, go a little, like half a beat ahead and behind. Or you can maybe have the first one be a little longer and the second one have a delayed start. Okay, that doesn't sound as good. Let's fix this real quick. Oh my goodness. That would sound better. And then I would have the same type of thing with the next 2 chords. So yeah, it's just it's a matter of consistency. If you want something somewhat simple, work in like groups of 3 or 4 chords, or 2 or 3 or 4. Have the same kind of rhythm, repeat, and then however long the progression is. Like this is 4 chords. I had the first 2 doing something. The next 2 I would have to do the same thing, but I'm not going to do that right now. And yeah, if I had an 8-chord progression, I would have, maybe these first 4 would do some pattern, and the next 4 would do some pattern. Or maybe I would just have a pattern 2 chords long and have that 4 times. So yeah, so bass line, how do you make your bass line not sound like your melody? So your bass line, well, it depends what genre you're working in, but let's say you're working in, like house or whatever. So your bass line is going to want, you want to make your bass line somewhat long. if you want it to be somewhat interesting, then you'll have some long notes and some short notes. So what I just have a simple bass line going now, and this wouldn't function well as a melody because it's just the notes are too spread out. And you probably want your bass line to not be able to function as a melody. Like if you put whatever, if you have your bass line and you pitched it up maybe 3 octaves, probably don't want it to sound too much like a melody, unless you're doing something less heavy, I guess. But I'm assuming you're doing something somewhat heavy related. Okay. So yeah, this is an actual distorted bass line. And I don't have any sidechain going now, that's fine. And your melody is you probably want it to be somewhat quicker because it's going to have motifs and just more movement overall. Shorten these notes up. And yeah, same thing what I was talking about before. It's easy or good sometimes just to work in the basic intervals from the bass line. So now I have the bass line playing an E. So B is a 5th. That's not what I thought it was going to do. Sorry, I'm just trying to get something down. So this isn't, the bass line was kind of random, so it doesn't sound amazing, but just the melody definitely works with the bass line, but wouldn't sound okay as a bass line. It has some more notes and it's less consistent in its, everything that's going on in its rhythms, I guess. So yeah, bassline wanted your bassline to be long melody. It's going to have probably more notes, but that depends, If you just want the more basic kind of fast melody, then yeah, it's going to have more notes. And also a melody will have higher jumps. Like this melody doesn't have that high of jumps, but bassline just kind of doesn't do anything too interesting. This has some just combinations that sound good. So I mean, that's pretty much all I have to say regarding that. I don't know if I went over exactly what you wanted me to, but if anyone has any more questions, they would be much appreciated. Whoa. Mixer is weird. What happened? That's weird. Okay, it doesn't seem like anyone has questions. So, I guess I'll just go over seventh chords. That's a thing that people don't always know about, I guess. So, if you're making, a lot of the times seventh chords, they'll be in a normal chord progression, but also if you're working in a genre that has a lot of seventh chords, then you're going to want to use a lot of seventh chords. And almost every chord will be more interesting than just a triad. So let's try to do something along those lines. So if you're making a seventh chord, you're going to have a triad, major or minor. I'll just do major for now. And the same interval that the third is from the first note of the chord, or the second note of the chord, which is the third, an interval of the third. You're going to add. Okay, I didn't explain that right. So take from the first note of the chord to the second note of the chord, and I already said that this is the second note of the chord in a triad is a third. This in this case is a major third. So since this is a major third, it's a major triad, you're going to want to add a major third above the fifth, which is the third note of the chord. And I have all these numbers, and I'm working in both the notes of the chords. So this is the first, second, third note of the chord. But this is the interval of a third from the root note of the chord. This is the interval of the fifth from the root note of the chord. Just to clear that whole thing up. And then, so from the first note of the chord to the second note of the chord, which is the third, I already said that in this case it's a major third. So you're going to want to add a major third above this top note, which is the fifth or the third note of the chord. So it's basically like two major triads on top of each other, separated by a minor triad. Or maybe a minor chord with just this note added to make it a major seventh. And I'm explaining all these confusing things because that's kind of how the seventh chord works. It's different things inside it of one thing, right? You have your major chord, your minor chord, your major intervals, your minor intervals, all that stuff. That's just how it works. And so the other type of minor seventh, or the other type of seventh is, well, one of the other type of sevenths is a minor seventh. So I'll make one of those right now. Let's do A, I guess. So, obviously I'm working in C major. All the white keys. So an A chord is going to be an A minor in the key of C major. So since this is a minor, and this is a minor triad right here, the first note of the chord to the second note of the chord, this from the fifth or the third note of the chord, you're going to add another minor interval. So a minor seventh is two minor third intervals separated by a major third. And there's one like one other major type of seventh chord, and that's a dominant. So dominant is a term used to describe the fifth note of a scale, but you don't really need to know that. You just kind of don't even really need to know the name of the chord, just kind of know how to use it. So like I said, so that's all worked out, right? I've had the major triad, and then what do I add above that? Either a minor or major, and it's a major because this is a major, and it works out with the scale. It's a B, which is in the key of C major. But if you are to go on the fifth note of the scale, the G, and make its triad G, B, D, that's a major triad. And then, so you would think you would add a major triad up here, but that doesn't fit the scale. So with that, you're just going to drop that one so it fits the scale, and that's a dominant 7. So hear how that sounds. That doesn't sound very good by itself. And it's a good tool for adding some tension into a track, and it sounds good to have this be, the last chord of a progression. And I'll just flip the notes around like I was doing earlier so it sounds a little better. So yeah, you can imagine that just being the end of the chord progression to the beginning. So maybe I'll make some random chord progression of sevenths. So another minor seventh, the A. I'm going to add the A down here. And then, like I was doing earlier, going to flip that note up so it conforms a little more. Then maybe an F. And I'm doing that quick, but it's just the same thing every time. It's the major third and then that same whatever type of third it is over the fifth of the chord. And that's pretty boring progression, but that's because I'm, just having half bar chords. And not doing anything interesting with them. But that's the basics of just working with seventh chords. If anyone has any questions about seventh chords or anything, I can definitely answer those. In fact, it'd be a lot easier if you had questions, because it's ranting about random stuff. I don't know if I'm interesting anyone. Right now I'm just going to open up a score with a lot of seventh chords, and maybe I can look at that for a second. What happened to the mixer? That's weird. I've always okay, so you're saying I've always shied away from using notes that are one half step away from each other. Is it viable? It's definitely viable to do that. In fact, it can sound really good just with like seventh chords like I was talking about earlier. So say you have the C major 7, and say you want to drop this B down, down here. So the B and the C are a half step away from each other. But that sounds pretty good. So that's definitely, if you're just like maybe you're just, sometimes when you're making chords you're not really thinking about music theory and you're just putting what sounds good, which is okay. It's good to have music theory in mind a little bit, but yeah, you can definitely go kind of the random route. And the reason I'm saying that is because maybe that's why you have notes that are half step away from each other. And I mean, pretty much, unless it's some like random weird note, it can sound good. It's in really any scenario, or it's not going to sound good in any scenario. It's something that you definitely can't use all the time, but sometimes in special occasions it's gonna sound good. Yeah, like when I add the half step right here. I don't really know exactly what type of chord that is, but it's definitely something, and can definitely be used in certain scenarios, just not always. But yeah, it's not something you have to try to do. You don't have to go try to have every chord have intervals that are half step away from each other, but definitely doesn't hurt to have it sometimes. Okay, so this chord progression has a lot of things going on that with changing scales and everything, but I'm probably not going to focus on that too much now because, hey Ninja Boss, if you have any questions, I don't know if you just got here, but if you did, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them in chat and I can go over whatever concept or question you want me to. So I guess this is... Oh, okay. Hi. Yeah, I didn't know that was you. Yeah, but still, if you have any questions. Does anyone ever use master tempo slider? This thing? Do you mean the pitch? Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, so let's say you have a chord progression. And this chord progression didn't start off like this. I didn't just play this. I had all the chords and... Here, I'll put them here so I can mess with them. So originally, all these chords were just pretty boring. I just had them... All the notes started... Oh, shoot. And there are none of these things. Yeah, master pitch. Sometimes people, I don't know, like I wouldn't use it for an entire track. It's fun to just use sometimes though. I mean, just for fun. Anyway, when you're, say you made this chord progression, and like I said, I already messed with this one a lot. But as you can see, I shifted some of the notes off, and that's not a music theory thing. That's just so it sounds like it's being played. But also I added these little notes in that aren't really part of the chord. They're just kind of after the chord or something. Like this G here, this D. So these are called non-harmonic tones. And I don't know why they're called that, but it's basically, it's not a melody. It's kind of part of the chord and also kind of not. And there's different types of these. Like I know there's one called a neighboring tone, and that would be like, see how I have an E here, a G here. If I were to go here and then take an F, it's the note in between these two. And yeah, I'm probably being kind of confusing right now, so I'm just gonna make a more basic progression. Yeah, so it's when you have the chord progression, and then you just add a note maybe at the end. And there's names. I could explain a bunch of different ones to you. I think mainly the usefulness of this is just to know that there's a thing called non-harmonic tones, and then you can just go on the internet and look them up, different types of them, and they're really fun to add to your chords, and they make them sound a lot better, especially if it's like a piano or something. Like if it's a pad, maybe it's not going to add too much if it's like a background thing. But if you're just, having chords as like the main element of your intro or whatever, you want them to be a little more interesting. Yeah, and like here I broke it up so this note plays way late. Okay, so I went on about that. I was thinking people had some more questions. Is anyone interested in chords or melodies or whatever? The chat is looking empty. So yeah, and this is called music theory, but if you have any other slightly music theory related questions, I can also go over those. How do you think of a melody when you're starting a song? Okay, so what I like to do is take a pretty inspirational patch or synth or whatever. So not just 3XOSC sine waves. Maybe. So let's distortion on it. And then I have a little MIDI keyboard. It's pretty small, but it does the job because it's usually how I come up with melodies, if that's how I'm going about it. And I usually will just play the bottom note, which is the bass line, and then the top note, which is the melody. And obviously once you fill it in, there'll be in between notes that are the chords or maybe extra notes to the melody, but I just start with that, kind of the bare bones. And then I'll usually start with, whatever bass note, maybe an A. Where is it? Right here. And then I'll just do some common interval from A. So maybe a fifth, maybe a seventh, maybe a ninth. That's a little less. Any of those. Start with an ARP. Yeah, an ARP can help, definitely. Especially Oh, how many keys? It's a low, like, I don't know, less than 49. Start with an ARP, yeah. So different kind of ARPs. Well, you weren't asking about ARPs, so I'm gonna talk about them anyway. So you can have an ARP that just plays the chords, and that's like you plug in the chords and then have the arpeggiator going. And that's just your basic ARP. But I like to have sometimes like a background element, kind of background element that's an ARP, and it just plays the same pattern over all the chords. So maybe, and you kind of learn these patterns, like you'll hear them all over the place. And then, so this isn't the melody, this isn't the bass line, but it can help you give inspiration for both. Have I ever used general MIDI? What do you mean by that? Yeah, what do you mean by general MIDI? Oh, but no, I don't think that's the. It sounds almost like the start of the drop. I think it's a little different. I think there's like one note difference between those two. Maybe it's the same. I don't know. But yeah, I mean that just goes to show you how common it is. You can find it everywhere. Fruity LSD. Yeah, I'm still. I don't know what you're talking about, to be honest. Fruity LSD. Fruity LSD. Yeah, you could send me your FLP, I guess. But I mean, if I don't know what it is, I don't think I would know any downsides to it. Probably be easier if you could explain it. I mean, you probably are explaining it right. I just don't know. But okay, back to what I was talking about. I'll start with a top note, bottom note. So, there's just, what's this one and I'm not a great piano player, but you kind of start to get an idea once you get going. Like this is an actual melody that I made a bit ago. Here, let's get a better patch for it. I want to find the actual thing that I used. I don't think I have that synth in here though. Whatever, I'll use FL keys. Yeah. Omega Zero, I still don't know. I don't know really anything about that, so I'm probably not an authority on it at all. So anyway, this is like a melody I made a few weeks ago. I just started with, here, I'll open up the piano roll. Basic, minor, third. And then I just went up to an octave. And then down to the bass note. It's a really simple start. Doesn't sound good by itself. I just developed it a little more. Wait, no. Okay, it was the E. So I started with a fifth, which is even more simple. And that was just the start of it. So the fifth up to the minor third, up to just an octave above. Same thing, but now I add the third of this new bass note, which is the G. And then I have kind of an interesting chord in here. And then it kind of just wrote itself from there, so. Well, it kind of did. I don't know, not completely, but you just have to get going. Yeah, so I just, because you don't want to focus just on the melody, because then you have no reference point for the bass line, and you also don't want to start with all the notes of the chords at once. So you just, what I do, something I can manage, is just the top note and the bottom note. And then you can either just mess around with the piano, work off intervals or try to get something in your head. But any more questions? I know I keep asking that, but there's questions in Discord. That's what I'm. Okay, so I'm looking in the FL Studio Discord. Go on about melodies and chords and what they are opposed to each other. That'd be nice. And what you can do with them. So, ice cold. Oh, logging into Twitch. Okay, so ice cold, if you're in Twitch, just tell me in Discord. Okay. So I'll just, what melodies, so yeah, I think I was talking about this a little bit earlier. I didn't totally go in depth, but melodies are kind of part of the chords and also kind of not. Which is why, okay, so you can see the video, but you can't post comments. Yeah, that's okay. Okay, and thanks Audio Saver for that. I didn't see that. Okay, so a lot of the times, a melody might just be the notes of the chord played above the chord. see, this is, you would think of these top notes as a melody. They're really just get a queue of questions beforehand. Wait, okay. So Omega Zero said it would be a good idea to get a queue of questions beforehand for small fragments of songs. Oh, feedback? Wait, I'm not sure what you're asking. If you could rephrase that, I'll look at the chat again in a few minutes, but I'm not sure exactly what you mean. But anyway, with Ice Cold's question, so they're kind of the same thing. Melody is kind of part of the chord, but also not. Like, so melody could just be the notes of a chord, just kind of with a different rhythm, and played at, different times. They're spaced out. Whereas a chord is probably just going to be played all at once. Most of the time, at least, almost all at once. But a melody doesn't have to be just the notes of a chord. Like right here I have a minor triad, but maybe I'll add a right, see I have a D in here, I have a D up here. That's not part of either of these chords. So it's kind of like adding that note to the chord, but it's also not, because it's just a quick thought, Like a chord is a entire idea for the melody to play off of, but each note of the melody doesn't have as much significance as the entire chord. So you can kind of use the intervals of the chord, but you can also go off of them. But yeah, basically, that's kind of the more how I think of it, but for practical use, basically, your chord is just going to be triad or seventh chord or ninth chord or whatever. And if you start with a chord progression in the bass line, whatever you start with, the melody is just kind of a idea that's added to that chord progression. So a lot of the times you can make your chord progression, say you're someone that likes to start with a chord progression. You can just have the chord progression all out, and then maybe even like play it on loop, and then try to improvise something above it. And then you might find good little nuggets of melodic information that you like. Melody is so yeah, with electronic music you're working in more than just notes. So like you might have these chords up here, piano chords all the way up here, then maybe you'll have these sine wave, and then maybe the melody will be like in between. But yeah, usually you won't have like a chord progression like this one here, and then you usually won't go below that for the melody. It can even be like in the same octave as the chords, but yeah, that's really up to you. But usually if I'm just writing in one instrument, like say this one, I'll either have it be same notes, like same octave as the chords, or above it. So there's really no rule, but if you're writing in one instrument, the chord or the melody is almost always going to be above the chords. Mix up time signatures and have to ditch specific idea. I'm not sure what you're saying there, but I've definitely, yeah, I mostly just work in 4/4, so I've never really had that problem. Also, in electronic music, if you're in like 3/4, you can just make them triplets in the same BPM. So yeah, I've never really had that problem. But if anyone has any more questions, I can definitely gonna stream for a little bit more. So I definitely have room for some more questions. Or, anything I went over that I didn't explain well enough. What do I do now? Yeah, I can't tell if I'm in between questions or if I've just ran out. But yeah, Omega Zero, I'm not sure what you were saying before, but if you were saying I should get questions ahead of time, it's definitely not a bad idea. But a lot of the times people don't like to ask their questions ahead of time, or they can't make the stream or whatever, so I try to make it work. But yeah, people usually, they don't always know what to ask, which is kind of hard. But if anyone feels like they don't know what to ask but kind of has an idea, you can also just say that and maybe I'll know where you're coming from. How did I learn music theory? So I used to take piano lessons back when I was like 5 to 10 maybe, I don't know exactly. And so then when I started electronic music like 3 years ago, I knew what chords were, just triads. And then kind of over time I looked up like what seventh chords were, and then I kind of figured out some of it. I used the internet a lot, and then actually last year I took a music theory course just at high school. And if you're in high school or college or whatever and you have an open elective, that it's definitely useful to take a music theory course. Like I know people sometimes say you shouldn't learn music theory because then it like takes all the fun out of it, or something along those lines, but it can only help you because you can ignore it and like so easily. Like I'll just be writing, and if music theory isn't working, I'll just ignore it and start doing what I want. But it kind of always works out in the end, I guess. Oh, how long does it take you to learn a synthesizer? Well, Harmor, I don't think I've learned yet, and I use it all the time. Yeah, Harmor's definitely heavy on the knobs. Like, I've used this probably for like a year and a half, just like as my main synth. Don't know what this does. Don't know what some of this stuff does. Most of it I've kind of figured out, though. You just kind of, once you learn how a normal subtractive synthesizer works, like unison, filtering, then you kind of, you already have that knowledge. So you're like, okay, I know if I want to make a supercell pluck, I'm just gonna, then look, reverb, delay, chorus, and then yeah, then you just start kind of figuring out the other stuff as you go. But it doesn't take too long. Mostly you just want to make sure you know the basics of, what's constant in every synthesizer, like unison and mostly filtering and vibratos and a lot of synthesizers. And then you can appreciate the extra features instead of just thinking of it as a mess of knobs, I guess. Which, I mean, Harmor is just so good. Yeah, Omega Zero, it's kind of like that. But also, I mean, you learn what a lot of this stuff is over time. Like, once you know what a phaser is, then obviously you know what the mix will do. And you know what the speed will do, and you'll kind of know what keyboard tracking does. You might not know exactly what the width does, but you just kind of figure that out. Yeah, it is kind of experimentation. A lot of it. I don't, if I want to learn, what the harmonic clipping threshold does, I don't look it up. I still don't really know what that does. It just sounds kind of cool. It's my favorite third-party plugin. Well, you didn't say synthesizer, so definitely Shimmer. And my mixer's all messed up. What happened? If anyone can help me with my mixer, I can't see the effects. I honestly don't know what happened to my mixer. Richie made it. Yeah, Richie, if you have questions, I'm kind of going on about synthesizers right now. But to answer you, Turtle Slave, even though I can't open it because I don't know why I can't see my effects, but it's definitely Valhalla Shimmer. Here, I'm gonna open up. I'm gonna open up this project that uses. Wait, no, never mind, because I can't look at my effects. Okay. Yeah, but Richie, if you have any questions, definitely waiting for the questions. So it's basically just this massive reverb. And what I like to do with it is put it at full mix. And you basically just get like an ambience out of it. And then I'll just have a bunch of different... I could show you this if I could see my effects on my mixer, but I can't. But basically what I'll do is I'll just have a bunch of different synths and instruments, and I'll put them into a shimmer that's on 100% mix. And then I'll just play different notes with them, and it will all add up into like an ambience. And that's one of the ways to use Shimmer, but that's how I like to use it. But I also like Pad Shop. Pad Shop is really cool. Plus, press the little rectangle. Left. The one next to the blue speaker. Wait. Yeah, I'm so lost. This has happened to me before. And I don't remember how I fixed it. Oh yeah, I was using Patcher just because I can't figure out how to fix my mixer and get effects. Oh, that's... Okay, thank you very much, Audiosaver. Weird name person, they can be about anything at this point because I think we've ran out. I've covered all the music theory questions, I think. Oh, Richie, figure out a scale. So there's definitely plenty of ways, easy ways to figure out a scale. None of these, all these are going into shimmer, so they're not going to sound very good. So you have this thing up here. Where is it? Stamp. And then you can just go, these are the scales listed all right here. And then the scales, common scales are just major, and then minor, or melodic, natural, harmonic. And then you just click on whatever note you want the scale to be on. So C, and then it tells you. And you can put this on maybe a silent, like a muted instrument, and then you go on the next instrument, and then it's all ghost notes. Yeah, if it's C scale, it's just all the white notes, white keys. Why is this slide? But otherwise, you can just memorize how it sounds. So and then maybe you want a D major. Yeah, Turtle Slave, there will probably be more. Once a week, hopefully. Well, we're going to get that started. We're going to get the weekly thing started eventually. So wait, okay. Yeah, Turtle Savior asking me about my favorite third party. Here's Shimmer doing... So this whole ambience is just really simple instruments. Like you just have an organ and just a saw wave and stuff going into a shimmer. That's basically all it is. Oh, and Richie, if you have any more... Yeah, it's all sent to the same shimmer. So, it's really easy to do. Yeah, it's all being routed just to this track right here. Just one shimmer. But yeah, Richie, if you have any more questions... music theory questions? Oh, it's $50. Yeah, if anyone has music theory questions, I'll take those, and if not, I can take some general production questions. Or just whatever, honestly. Just to ask whatever question you have. I probably can't run this whole project. And then, if you want a free plugin that does ambience as well, Paul Stretch is the way to go. Where is it? Stretch. basically it's just this thing that you put an audio file into, and it just stretches it out. And if it's a decently melodic thing, it's gonna sound good, like every time. Like here, I just made a bunch like a few minutes ago actually. These are all put into Paul Stretch. What? They didn't export. Are you kidding me? Whatever. I don't think plugins are that pricey. I mean, they take time to develop. I think most of them are pretty fair. And it's not like everyone in the world is buying plugins, so they can be like $5. I mean, it's once you get into the more advanced stuff, like I mean, not every producer wants Shimmer because, you know, if you're making like I don't know, something that doesn't have like ambiances, you don't want it. It's kind of a niche thing. So it's a small market, so you need to have a decently high price. Yeah, but that being said, there's so many free plugins. I mean, all the M Audio free stuff. Not everything from M Audio is free, but they have a lot of free things. Paul Stretch. Just let's hear it dry. Oh, it's gonna sound so bad. Like, imagine if that was the song. It would sound so bad. Just that crappy horn sample. How do I sort my track? I'm not sure what you mean by that. Yeah, that's what Shimmer does. It turns random notes that happen to be in the same key into just a beautiful ambience. So cannot remember the pattern. Yep, I knew it. It's not gonna work. But yeah, I can answer. Oh, in the playlist. So I like to keep the same element on the same track, at least for the same section. So like this is the drop or whatever, so I have this kick sample all on the same track. And then I like to have my kicks together. Obviously I didn't follow that here because that's a kick as well, and it's below the claps. But yeah, I like to have the claps mostly together. And then the percussion is mostly together. The like background loops, those are mostly together. Cymbals are together, and then the instruments I just have all in one. I usually don't have multiple patterns of instruments playing at the same time. I just put them all in one. Oh yeah, I know how to solo stuff. I was just bringing things in progressively to see how the CPU would deal with it. Yeah, but okay, so I'm on the project, but still, I'm willing to answer any questions. Oh, that's just so fun. Oh, and then if you put a piano into Shimmer, that's just the best. I didn't even do that in this track. Oh, wait. And i7. Well, whatever you have, put it in CPU wise, put that into CPU benchmark, and then see what score it is. And for FL Studio, it should be 6,000 or above, and mine's like exactly 6,000. So, you know, it's running the. It's not gonna run the more complex projects well, especially with OBS. But yeah, if it's like a 9,000, that'd be amazing. Oh, what piano plugin? So this piano plugin is free. This is called Labs. If you go Google Spitfire Labs, you can find this for free. Well, it is free. I just haven't integrated graphics, so. That's Shimmer. Yeah, I think I'll be wrapping up in probably 10 minutes. So I have time for probably one more question or concept. See you, Turtle Slave. Thanks for sticking around. And thanks for your questions. Those are much appreciated. Better to design sounds for the melody or melody for the sounds? Yeah, trick question, definitely. I mean, they work together, so the process I don't think matters as much as the result. It's probably the best answer to that question I have. If you want an expressive melody, then you're going to need probably some slide notes. And you're also going to want some sort of synth patch that allows for more expressive melodies. So in that case, I would have a synth patch that allows for expressiveness ahead of time. But if the idea is, yeah, definitely a trick question. Yeah, next stream we're definitely gonna look for a new method of questions. I mean, I'm not saying that question was bad. I'm saying like overall, people don't have that many questions. He has a 13K score. That's pretty high. Says, yeah, 8,000 is better than mine, at least. But like Richie said, if you have a GPU and, for OBS, then I don't have one. I have integrated graphics. Okay. If anyone has a last minute question, I can answer it, but if not, I'm probably going to end the stream. What was the one you asked before? ZXC letters name. I don't know why I just timed you out, Richie. I'm sorry. I didn't do that. About volume levels between instruments in a project. Well, that's one aspect of mixing. Uh, yeah, I mean, I don't know the exact question. If you can type the exact question again, that would be better. I should stream some Fortnite. I can barely even play Fortnite. With my PC and with my skill level, I can barely even play it. So I don't think I'm probably not gonna stream that. Oh, okay. So yeah, if it has like 30 different instruments, definitely some are just gonna be background instruments. Definitely. Uh, so there's kind of like there's a few ways to think of levels in that type of way. Compressing volume levels. So yeah, so you're talking about mixing. So there's different ways to think about levels in that way. So there's going to be background elements to a song. Here, I'm going to open up, while I talk about this, I'm going to open up this track because it has a lot of background elements. So think about some things are going to be in the background, and some things are going to be in the foreground. But, maybe you have two chords that are both in the foreground. So maybe those are layering together. So don't think of things as the individual synth patches, but think of things as the individual elements. So like all these things together with the shimmer that's basically one pad or one lead, right? I don't think of that as like, oh, this needs to be the foreground, this needs to be the background. No, they all kind of work together to build on the same thing. So I think of this pad slash ambience lead thing, that's in the foreground of the track. Now these bell things, those are in the background. Everything but the bells work together to make the one pad that's in the foreground. So that's a loud pad, and these bells are quiet. And the bass line, so across the frequency spectrum, you're only going to want, like, instrument-wise, you're only going to want one thing in the foreground, but maybe multiple things come together to form one thing. So I wouldn't want another bass line conflicting with this one, but maybe I would want like a subtle little textural bass line thing to build on to layer with it, maybe. Yeah, but if you have 30 tracks worth of things, then probably some of them are layering together. So maybe you really only have like 10 distinct elements, and then out of those 10 distinct elements, maybe just 3 are in the foreground or 5 are in the foreground, the rest are in the background, right? Like you might have, let's say you're making some dubstep or whatever, you're gonna have your main bass, but maybe multiple basses are coming together to layer that bass. So that's one main element, and then maybe you're and dubstep, you just the bass is like the only thing you can hear really. Everything else in the background. So you might have like some pads in the background, an ARP that's in the background. You can't really hear that. Then maybe you'll have some hats. Those are kind of in the foreground, kind of in the background. But with drums, it's different. Different rules, I would say. Definitely. So think of things not as their individual instruments, but as what they come together to form. And then think of those things as, okay, some need to be in the background, some need to be in the foreground. And that's really how you deal with that. Oh, how you layer things without fighting for space? Well, I mean, they shouldn't fight for space if they are really a layer. Like if I have... chords, maybe, I don't know, with something else. A lot of the times layers will just be playing the same note, but maybe they'll add on top of each other instead of like conflicting. Like they're not going to be so loud that they're conflicting for space. If they are, then maybe you need to EQ some of them, so accentuate the highs of one layer and the lows of another. But here, these drums, I have like 20 drum tracks going, and this is kind of a special case, I would say, because it's all like one giant layer. Like this thing being gated with all these hats, I think of that as one thing. Those are just the hats. These aren't like 5 different things. That's just the hats. What about these things? This is just the clap. Even though it's a bunch of different layers. All it's playing right now are the hats and the clap. And now the kick. So that's just 3 things. And then the background stuff, which is kind of insignificant. You don't really need to worry too much about the spacing of the background stuff. And then really all you have is kick, hat, snare, background stuff. Or kick, hat, clap, background stuff. And then cymbals, which are also kind of in the background. And then just the pads and the bass line, which I can't play all together. Forcibly link channels together. There's there's layer. Yeah, layer works. So basically, if you were to take a layer, where is it? Then you set the children by selecting the things. And then when you play a note on the layer, it plays a note on all the things. But, yeah, I don't really do that. I would use Patcher instead of that. What do you mean though, Omega Zero? Like 33 group with 30. Are you talking about mixer tracks? That's just busing. It's just when you link that to there, link that to there, link that. So they're all linked to one mixer track. Yeah, it's a high obvious ninja. Yes, it's a MIDI plus keyboard controller. It's very small little MIDI keyboard. In the play, to forcibly link them together. I still don't really know what you mean. Oh. Audio. Yeah, I'm trying to upgrade my keyboard right now. I'm trying to get like a extra full size one maybe, but I don't know. Yeah, you don't need. I mean, I have a lot of tracks right now, but like, let's say I would stem these down, like all the hats, all the kicks, whatever. You wouldn't have any tracks. Yeah, like you could accomplish all this hat stuff with like not as many layers. But I mean, this is a layered, like the whole intention of this track was to be really organic. Oh, I always use audio clips for drums. Yeah. I mean, yeah, like right here I'm doing volume automation. And right here I'm doing like repeating things at weird textures, at weird points and stuff. Doing some more gating. So yeah, I like to use audio clips. Oh, and then also I find it easier to shift things slightly off the grid. Wouldn't it be a mess? It wouldn't be a mess if I stemmed things down. Yeah, but I mean, layering is just something, it definitely, it definitely can help you, but only, some good tracks might have like 4 layers going at a time. So it's just a case by case basis of how much layering you should be doing. Yeah, I mean, I didn't pull this track up to be like, oh, this is what your project should look like. I was showing people Shimmer, but which I still find this so funny. It's not music. Drum presets. Yeah, I've made like one good snare in my life. And then other than that I use samples. Let's see my one good snare. Yeah. That's it. Everything else is like weird. Oh yeah, I'm not using samples is like, I don't know. I've gone through stages where I thought that was the best thing ever, and then like I didn't think it was good, but I definitely think it's good to not use samples because, I mean, yeah, for the challenge, but also because like some of the innovation, like tons of the innovation of dance music comes from the drums. So if you're just purely using samples, you're not going to be innovating very much. But if you start, even if you just get to the point where you're able to make like sample quality drums, then you can go further than that eventually and just make some crazy drums that just, blow everything out of the water. And I try to make drums, but Yeah. Yeah, like sometimes I'll take a sample and I'll mess with it so much that I don't even remember that it's not my original sample. Yeah, like I don't have. Oh, by Richie. Yeah, I don't have too much of a problem using samples. Like I don't mind it, but I definitely like to use my own. I definitely prefer it. Breakcore drums. I have drum breaks. I don't really know what breakcore is. I mean, if I were making anything break, I would just use drum breaks, like actual drum recordings. Oh yeah, yeah. I feel like when I use a sample that's like a main part of the track, then I do feel guilty sometimes. Yeah, but if I just have some like background texture things going, I don't really mind. And if the um product is like a lot greater than the sum of its parts, then I also. Yeah, I don't know why Nightbot is timing people out. I'm sorry about that. Yeah, I've never heard of Queen Stone. Oh, I don't. Okay, see ya. Yeah, I've never heard. I don't know why you're not allowed to post links. I just added Nightbot so I could have my little advertisement in there. But yeah, if you want to join the next stream, I could. I ZXC, are you on the FL Studio Discord? Oh, people usually use looped samples. I mean, most of these aren't looped. I looped some of them, like myself, I guess. What the heck is that doing here? People usually use the combination of samples and loops, I think. I mean, I use loops just for the background, because like it's not. I don't. It's not, in my opinion, it's not worth laying out a bunch of shakers and humanizing them just so you can get this. That's just gonna sit right in the background. But you know, the main elements, I'll definitely have something that's my own of sorts. Okay, yeah, I think I'm gonna end the stream now. But thank you everyone for staying and asking questions, even when, kind of ran out of questions there for a while. If anyone hasn't joined the FL Studio Discord, I'm guessing that's where most people are from, but if anyone's not on the FL Studio Discord, that's down in my Twitch description. You can join it. Also, my other stuff in the Twitch description if you want to look at that. But yeah, I think I will end it there.